an angel defeated 185,000 soldiers. Do we have guardian angels? Throughout the Bible, God intervenes on behalf of his people. The story of Hezekiah and his numerous enemies is one of the most outstanding examples of such. Ahaz, his terrible father, was the polar opposite of Hezekiah. Just as his forefather David had done, he received the uncommon honor of doing what was right in the Lord's eyes during his reign. Hezekiah gets more attention in the Holy Bible than almost any other king since Solomon. When Hezekiah took power, Judah was almost completely ruled by Assyria. His reign was one of great reform. He led a campaign against all kinds of idolatry, destroying even the high places and the bronze serpent from Numbers 21, because the children of Israel burned incense to it. He gave it the name Nehushtan, which means a bronze thing in Hebrew. Hezekiah was the best king of Judah because he put his trust in the Lord God more than any other king. Eventually, Hezekiah rebelled against the Assyrian yoke, perhaps because of his military success in driving the Philistines out of the land, country places, to fortified city, thickly inhabited and well-defended places. Samaria was conquered by the Assyrians, and this emphasizes the seriousness of the threat which faced Hezekiah at this time. The siege of Samaria began during the latter part of the 4th year of Hezekiah's reign, continued during the 5th year, and ended in the first part of the 6th year, therefore 3 years. During this time, Assyria was experiencing problems of her own. Sargon II had recently passed away, and Babylon was engaged in an uprising. Sennacherib became Sargon's successor. Sennacherib took 46 fortified cities and 200,000 captives from Judah. Hezekiah sent a servile message to him, acknowledging that he had been wrong in rebelling. He abjectly paid 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold, a huge sum, to prevent an attack on Jerusalem. Sennacherib was traveling to Egypt at the time and was stopping in the city of Lachish, which is located to the southwest of Jerusalem. Hezekiah then began to fortify Jerusalem. It's possible that hearing about this prompted the king of Assyria to send representatives from his army to Jerusalem at a later time and demand that the city give up without conditions. 3 Jewish officials went out to meet the Assyrian emissaries and to hear their demands. The NKJV labels these officials by their original military titles: the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh. Rabshakeh was the officers sent by Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, to demand the surrender of Jerusalem. The Rabshakeh spoke insultingly to them in their own tongue. First, he mocked Hezekiah's trust in the fortifications of Jerusalem. Second, he made fun of Hezekiah's faith that Jerusalem's defenses were sufficient to protect the city. Then he disclosed his knowledge that Hezekiah had sought the assistance of other nations. Thirdly, he asserted that Judah was incapable of putting their faith in the Lord, since Hezekiah had removed all the high places and altars from the land. Rabshakeh did not realize that these were heathen shrines and not places where the Lord was worshipped. Next, he suggested a bet. He would give 2,000 horses to Judah if Hezekiah could find that number of horsemen. He made fun of the fact that Judah did not have a particularly large number of cavalrymen, and that they were therefore forced to rely on Egypt for their chariots and riders. Finally, the Rabshakeh claimed that the Lord had sent Assyria to destroy Judah. The Rabshakeh cautioned the people not to let Hezekiah fool them into believing that they could rely on the Lord for rescue. He addressed the people directly. If they would surrender, they would be granted the privilege of living in Jerusalem temporarily. The king of Assyria would then take them to Assyria, which he described as a land like your own. The people on the wall remained silent while the 3 Jewish officials returned to Hezekiah, thoroughly disheartened. When Hezekiah heard Rabshakeh making fun of him, he felt an immense amount of sorrow. He sent messengers to the prophet Isaiah with the message that Judah was helpless at a time when it required its strength the most. In addition, he requested that Isaiah pray for the people of Jerusalem and the remnant of Judah. Isaiah sent word back to Hezekiah that he didn't need to fear the Assyrian king, that God would put a spirit of fear upon him and cause him to hear a rumor and to return to his own land, where he would be slain. When the Rabshakeh returned to Lachish, he found that Sennacherib had transferred his assault to the neighboring fortress of Libnah. Sennacherib heard that Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, was advancing to attack him. He immediately tried to frighten Jerusalem into quick surrender by sending a blasphemous letter. Hezekiah wisely took the letter to the temple and spread it before the Lord. His prayer was a revelation of his deep trust in Jehovah. In reply, God sent Hezekiah a twofold answer by way of Isaiah. 2 Kings 19, 21-24. This is the word that the Lord hath spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice, and lifted up thine eyes on high? Even against the Holy One of Israel. By thy messengers thou hast reproached the Lord, and hast said, With the multitude of my chariots I am come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, and will cut down the tall cedar trees thereof, and the choice fir trees thereof. And I will enter into the lodgings of his borders, and into the forest of his Carmel. I have digged and drunk strange waters, and with the sole of my feet have I dried up all the rivers of besieged places. Isaiah's prophecy can be understood as a taunting song directed against Assyria. It depicts Jerusalem, the virgin, the daughter of Zion, as laughing in response to the threats made by Assyria. It condemns Sennacherib for profaning the holy name of God, and for boasting that he would conquer Judah, destroy her rulers and great men, tall cedars and cypress trees, and enter the palaces of Mount Zion, lodging place and forest. Sennacherib also bragged about his victories in other countries, especially Egypt, which he ruled at the time. What he failed to recognize was that all he had done was what God had already determined to be done. God knew him inside and out, and would break his towering arrogance, sending back to Assyria the remnants of his shattered army. Then, turning to Hezekiah, the Lord gave a sign that the Assyrian would not conquer Jerusalem. For 2 years, the people of Judah would not be able to raise normal crops because of the Assyrian presence, but would eat things that grew without cultivation. Then, in the 3rd year, they would be safe enough from the threat of assault that they could carry on their normal activities. Not only would the people of Jerusalem be spared, but the king of Assyria would not even be permitted to enter the city or even fire an arrow there. That night, the angel of the Lord visited the encampment of Assyria and killed 185,000 soldiers. When men arose early in the morning, the Assyrians were corpses. Sennacherib eventually made his way back to Nineveh, the city that served as his capital, but he met his end there. He actually outlived Hezekiah by 5 years. The prediction made by Isaiah in verse 7 came true when 2 of Sennacherib's own sons assassinated their father, and a third, Esarhaddon, took over as king in his place. This story is a good reminder that faithfulness to God does not protect you from adversity. It does, however, prepare you for those trials. You will be better prepared to deal with trouble and suffering if you live your life from a divine perspective. To rely on Him in bad times as much as you have in good. You will also have the opportunity to witness God at work.